if you're okay firing people when it's easy and, oh, I have no problem with it, I will bet dollars to donuts you have a very hard time retaining people.
Yes.
And you have no loyalty. Like it's hard for you to build the good side of the relationship.
Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, welcome back. We are going to have another niche down tactical episode with my boy Nikolas here. And what are we going to talk today about?
I want to talk about probably the craziest 6 months of my life, starting in February 2020.
Dude, before you get into that, dude, and by the way, I haven't corrected anybody. Maybe once. But I sold a property, and we closed on February 28th. And it was the highest per square footage in the thing. It was a 2-year turnaround, remodel, Airbnb. We cleaned up, and everybody was like, "Wow, you're like Nostradamus." I was like, "No, what you didn't know is 2 weeks from then I was about to get divorced, and I needed to get out of the relationship with my father-in-law who owned the house with me." So there was some overall factors, but I look really good, and so I'm going to take it, But what we're going to talk, what are we? Yeah, similar. Okay,
Similar
go ahead.
experience.
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's do it.
So I was working for this healthcare company, and they had promised to give me 3% equity. It was about a $50 million company, and I was stoked. I'm like, dude, 3% equity is going to be amazing. And so we talk in December of 2019 to finalize things. And they were going through some really difficult cash flow problems in an area that I wasn't responsible for. I didn't really know the depth of the problems, but I knew it was bad enough that we missed payroll once or twice, right? And I'm like, what is going on here? The area that I had overseen was doing well, but I knew that the company was struggling. So we meet in December, and they say, hey, look, we're ready to sign on the dotted line and have you get your 3%. But we need you to mortgage your house. We need you to sign a personal guarantee, take out a loan, purchase one of the entities that we own from us, and we're going to use that cash as working capital in the business. And I was like, what? They're like, yeah, it's going to be fine. And I'm like, well, and this is how bad it was. I was still willing to do that, but I was like, not for 3%. Like, I'm not going to have the same downside as you guys, but very, very limited upside. And so yeah, it didn't work. And I told them, look, I need something with equity. I'm not going to leave you guys in the lurch. I was overseeing 4 locations. We had like 1,500 patients, $30 million of business. I'm not going to leave you guys in the lurch, but I need something with equity. So we continued our conversations, and in February of the next year, 2020, I get a text out of the blue. It's like, hey, can you meet this morning? And I was like, that's weird. So I turned to my wife, and I'm like, hey, the guys want to meet here in Laverne. She's like, okay, well, you better be quick. Because my wife was in labor with our 4th son. This is February 19th, 2020. And I'm like, okay, that's crazy. So yeah, I'll be quick. So I go, we meet at the Habit. They sit me down. They can't make eye contact with me. And they're like, we've had financial problems. We're getting an investment from a private equity fund. They know that you're not going to be in this position long-term because you voiced that you want equity. So we're going to have to eliminate your position. And I'm like, what? We were just talking about equity and that you're firing me? They're like, yeah, we're really sorry. It was emotional for sure. I'm like, okay, well, how long are we talking about? The end of the month. I'm like, what's 11 days? Like, do I have like a severance? They're like, no severance. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? My wife's in labor right now, and it's February 19th, and you're telling me I'm done at the end of the month. So I was freaking pissed. And did and said some things that I regret. But my son is born. We're at home. I had already sold all my stocks because I was getting kind of worried about the coronavirus. And I ended up having 2 months at home with my son that I wouldn't have otherwise had. But the pandemic happens and everything shuts down. And if I had stayed in that position, I would have been traveling through all Southern California 4 or 5 days a week in the thick of coronavirus. So I'm grateful that I got fired at that moment because I didn't have to deal with all the COVID stuff. I was overseeing a healthcare company. But what it did was it gave me some time at home, but also to find and close on a business. So I start reaching out. We decide we're not going to live in Southern California anymore. We want to move to Idaho. I find this medical billing company in Idaho. And I start talking to the seller. And in March, we enter into an LOI for $3 million because the seller was scared, right? It's COVID. It's like, oh my gosh, what the frick is going to happen? And I'm like, I'm moving up there. It was a great deal. We move up there. We end up closing in June on this medical billing company. $3 million purchase price. They had done $400,000 the previous year. Let's roll with it. Well, turns out we get in, make some changes. It ends up doing $1.3 million a year in earnings, right? It was actually a really good company. We just had to make some tweaks to it. I start getting nervous again because I'm like, guys, the Fed just signaled that they're going to start raising rates. I'm worried about the macroeconomic environment. My brother-in-law needed to get out of it. My partners in the home health and hospice were not happy with me having another business. So I'm like, okay, let's sell this. And we sell the business, or we put the business on the market. We start having conversations. We talk to this private equity fund, and they're like, we'll give you $7 million for it. I'm like, okay, where do I sign? This is June of 2022, right? Mm-hmm. So we end up selling the business. And obviously you've seen everything that's happened since June of 2022. But I look back on that experience and I'm like, I got so freaking lucky because I entered into a purchase price at the scariest time of March 2020. Mm-hmm. And I sold the business at probably the most inflated time, June of 2022, in terms of asset prices. And I made out like a bandit. Do I think I'm smart? Yes. Do I think I work hard? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But was I lucky? 100%.
Well, yes, I will grant you yes. Okay. But I want to ask you a question because I've had this ability my whole life and I can't describe it. I have always had the ability to get out of a job or an investment right before I feel like it's going to go south. Like, I don't know. It's like that restaurant was peaking. And then I was like, you know what? Something doesn't feel right. And the moment I left, it's like, it all went south. Like, oh, I'm going to get out of this investment. Like, we should do that. Like,
yes,
I get that there's some luck in that. But there is, you had a different feeling, right? But there is some sort of feeling when it comes to business. Like maybe tailwinds or like you're seeing, okay, well, that's going to be interesting. Like, I don't want to do that. Like here's my frustration, right? You're saying you got lucky. But how many times are people justifying the newspaper business when it's been going downhill for 20 years? So we're going to make a comeback. You know? Like, so is it luck or is it cold facts? Is it honesty with yourself?
Yeah, I have this theory. You ever heard Elon Musk talk about we live in a simulation? Mm-mm. No, okay, so he's like, it's possible that we live in the Matrix, that all of this is just a simulation. And honestly, philosophers have been talking about this for hundreds of years. They're like, how do you know reality is real, blah, blah, blah. But I look at things and I'm like, all right, if Austin, you had 100 chances to live your life, right? 90% of those chances are going to fall within this kind of curve of distribution. You're going to be moderately successful, right? But you're going to have these tail cases. 5% of the time, you probably kill yourself because you overdosed, right? Or did something really stupid, got in a car accident. Mm-hmm. The other 5% of the time, you become a billionaire. But again, not because of anything you did in particular. It's because you moved to Palo Alto on a whim, or you met some guy named Mark Zuckerberg at a party somehow. You know what I mean? Like, you were put in the right place at the right time. So do I think that generally I would be successful in kind of any setting that I'd be placed in? Yes. But I think the magnitude of your success is really dependent on those moments that you don't know how to recognize in the moment, right? And we call that
Totally.
luck, we call that timing. So for me, that's how I think of it. I don't think I'm lucky just to be where I am, period. But I do think the magnitude of some of those swings is luck.
Guys, let me take a minute to tell you about my buddies over at Lead Hub, Ben and Aaron, the best humans I know. Not only are they amazing at marketing for trade companies, but Ben started his HVAC company in his garage, sold it for multi-million dollars. So when this guy talks, I listen. When we took over Dietz Mechanical, we had 22 reviews in 22 years. In 7 short months, we went from 22 reviews to 107. We went from a 4.2 to a 4.7. We tripled our Facebook presence and we tripled our calls. If you're an HVAC, plumbing, electric, landscaping company, and you're looking for a no BS approach to marketing, you're looking for people who have done it before, you got to go to leadhub.net. I had a similar situation happen to me about getting fired. Similar thing, equity, the whole nine. And it took me, because I did some things and said some things that I wish I wouldn't have said as well. And I'd be lying if there isn't a small percentage of me that still feels those things. I'm still working through it, moving on from it, and I have for the most part.
Yeah.
But I was doing some woodworking one day. I was doing something at my house or something, and I had an epiphany. And in the moment, it's impossible. It's really hard to see this. But sometimes the universe gets you out of a situation to make you available for another situation. It's really hard to be okay with that, but it's amazing how many times that's happened in my life. And what I also realized, especially in the last month, is that it's also going to twist you so hard and literally hold you underwater so long to remove the people in your life that aren't signed up for the same mission. And it's super hard, right? Because look, I'll play devil's advocate. Just from a human point of view, okay? Those 2 guys that came and laid you off, I would have had a check in my back pocket knowing that your wife is in labor. Even if the private equity firm said no severance, I would have gave you something. Because that's who I am, right? They didn't, and you sold your company 2 years later, who knows where they are, right? It doesn't really matter. But we forget that maybe we have to make some tough decisions, but don't forget that there's another human on the other end of that line. And I think that's where I have a big problem in business, is that there's a lot of people saying they're people first, saying they care, but when it comes down, they're sure as hell going to save their skin. They're not going to save yours.
Yeah, there were other experiences I had over the last few years, but for me, that's been probably the biggest takeaway is
I love it.
I've been on the other side of the table now from where those guys were.
Mm-hmm.
And I said all the right things.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, I don't, this isn't more important to me than our relationship. Money, you know what I mean? Like, oh, the business will never disrupt how we feel about each other. And then when you're in the moment and you're sitting across the table from somebody and you're having to make these difficult decisions, you have a choice to make. Do I do what I said I was going to do, or do I now understand kind of why people change and why they make different decisions?
Dude.
And for me, I did what I said what I was going to do. And so now I have this like inner confidence where no matter what happens, I know how I'm going to act. It's not a theory because I've done it now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very different than people who are like, oh yeah, we're people first. We care about people. Mm-hmm. And then the minute things get hard, they don't.
I had to let 2 people go the other day, a couple weeks ago, because they were underperforming. I threw up. Like, I left the office. Like, I fucking hated it. But the team's better. They weren't performing. They'd been talked to multiple times. I want to save everybody. But here's what cracked me up. Is that same person that was upset that I let him go got a job offer from somebody the next day that my guy set up, the guys that he worked with, and he didn't show up to the job interview. Well, then I stopped caring. Because I was like, how many times can you give people an opportunity, right? Doesn't mean I'm still okay with it. Doesn't mean I'm still happy about it. But don't don't call out your boss. Don't be upset with somebody until you've sat in their shoes and had to do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who it is. It's never fun.
Well, and now that I've sat in their shoes, I still wouldn't call them out. I'm like,
Yeah.
I get it. Like, I understand the position that you were in. I don't agree with it. I wouldn't do it. But I'm not going to sit here and say, like, you're an evil person. You're stupid. How could you do such X, Y, and Z? They're hard. I mean, those are really hard to see. Like, firing somebody sucks. If you ever get to the point where it's easy, like,
Dude,
you're in the wrong business.
if you got to the point, like, remove yourself from the business because you flipped over to the other side. like it is not fun. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to make those tough decisions. And I'm upset about it. Well, yeah, I'm glad you are, because if you aren't, then we got to have another conversation about how you have no emotion in your body.
Yeah. If you aren't upset about it, something is wrong with you. And that does not bode well for your future. It doesn't.
It does not.
No.
I feel very sorry for people close to you in your life. No, 100%.
Because
go ahead.
The other side of that coin is, if you're okay firing people when it's easy and, I have no problem with it, I will bet dollars to donuts you have a very hard time retaining people.
Yes.
And you have no loyalty. Like, it's hard for you to build the good side of the relationship if it's so easy for you to sever the relationship, right? Like, and that's the good with the bad. That's the upside of the downside, where if you can build good relationships with people, you will have very successful businesses.
No,
but
dude,
that makes it makes firing people much more difficult.
Well, perfect example is that this relationship, right, between you and I, we may never be in business together. We may never do other things, but the lesson that took me way too long to understand, because I was the guy with the gasoline can in my 20s, is you never know. You never know when this world circles back around. So for the life of me, for the last 7 years, I don't burn any bridges anymore. You never know. You never know where it comes back around. And so unless they provoke me to turn into somebody that I don't want to be, and I have to, get, where I need to go, I never. And I try to give them a clean out, because you never know, right? Because think about it this way. I was a drug addict and alcoholic. I'm not saying I was a terrible person, but I've made some changes. And there's some people that have taken some chances on me that 10 years ago wouldn't have. So nobody knew that I was going to change. So, like, I give everybody the same opportunity.
I'm the same way. I'm never going to be the first one to burn a bridge. Now, I may respond to someone who I think's acting like an idiot, but it's not worth it. It's just not worth it for your own self. Forget about the business. Like, it's not worth it for you to have to carry that baggage for the rest of your life. No.
I had a mentor. It's funny, he actually called like 2 days ago. I hadn't talked to him in a couple of months. I had a mentor screw me over out of a job. Like big time. Like, I changed my life for it. He pulled the job the day before. I was supposed to do the job. I had to uproot my whole life again.
Wow.
And for a month I carried around that fucking visceral anger. And I called him one day and I said, "Hey man, look, no part of me tells me that you handled this the right way, and I'm still upset with you, but I forgive you." And he said, "Holy fuck." He goes, "I haven't slept in like a month." He goes, "It's been eating me alive." He goes, and I'll apologize for it for the rest of my life. I wasn't in a good mental space, and I didn't feel I could take you on. But I said, "Hey, put it down. Put it down." Yeah. And what I realized in that moment, I gave him a gift, but I also gave me a gift. I could move on with my life instead of rehashing it over and over and over again.
Yeah, I wish I learned that 20 years ago.
I think we all do. Guys, I love this stuff. We never know where it's going to go. Share it with a friend. If they want to follow you, man, they want to reach out to you, how would they do that?
Yeah, co-founders Nick on Twitter.
I love it. Guys, send it to a friend. Rate us and review us. We'll see you next time.